The race is on. Brothers and sisters, God bless you. Uh, this is Pastor Ambrose Carroll with Green the Church. You all come on in, come on in. Once again, the race is on. We want to give you all time to come in, click, and share. We are on. This is season 2 of our podcast. As many of you all know, we've been on hiatus a little while ever since the election. Uh, Took the wind out of me a little bit. You know what I mean? We been thriving and moving and fighting and scrimmaging. Uh, I heard a poet say, when things go wrong, they sometimes will. When the road you're trudging is all uphill, when cares weigh you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. So I feel like I've been in a fight. Anybody ever lost a fight? You know, we were doing this piece, a race, as a podcast. I've been doing it solo bolo. But anybody ever got in a fight at school and then y'all had to go home and get some backup? Hey man, well, this is what this is. We coming back season 2. We were fighting by ourselves. Took some losses with the current administration and other stuff. But I went back and got my big brothers and sisters. And today, we want to begin to have these conversations, season 2, with Carroll Ministries International. All of us are going to be co-hosting from week to week. And we want our friends, family, church folks to come on in and support us, hang out as we talk about justice issues. Come on out, come on back to the fight. I'm not the only one, I'm sure, that has been trying to take some self-time. I'm not the only one that has kind of been out of sorts. But the reality is of the world is that we've been in this battle trying to get to beloved community for so long. And there have been ups and downs. That's right. There have been mountains and there have been valleys. And this is just our opportunity to continue. So again, let me start off. Let everybody just go around and introduce themselves. Again, I'm Ambrose Carroll, and we, definitely talking to our clergy, our pastors, and lay leaders, and all of those things. I'm currently an associate minister at the McGee Avenue Baptist Church in Berkeley, California, where Reverend Dr. Michael Smith is my pastor. I've pastored in different cities around this country over the years, and just glad to be on the call, founder of Green the Church. Come on, Bruce, or we'll go in order.
Got to go in order, huh? Listen, good afternoon, everybody. We're excited to be here. One preacher says, we're happy, glad. Well, I'm happy as can be to be in this movement. I do bring you greetings from the great state of Louisiana. I pastor historic Antioch Baptist Church in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm excited to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. So glad that you're here. I am Benjamin Carroll Jr., number 2, and I pastor the Greater Antioch Baptist Church of West Palm Beach, Florida. Here with Green the Church, Florida. We just stood up in Florida, so excited to be here. Looking forward to this wonderful conversation with my siblings.
Hey, everybody. Emily Carroll. I currently pastor Asbury United Methodist Church and also St. Matthew in New Orleans on the West Bank. And so excited to be here in this space of Green the Church, where I still am very active with Green the Church Louisiana, and also dealing with those things around policy issues within our state that affect us as people of color, and just policy issues that affect climate and climate change. So excited about this hour and excited as to how you'll be able to hear and contribute to this dialogue.
All right, all right, all right. I know many people often ask, what is Green the Church, what it's all about? Let me just stop and give you all a little history. Green the Church is really an outgrowth of something. Our father was what I always call an itinerant Baptist preacher, which means he just moved around a lot. After his passing, my mom, I always say she was an elementary school teacher here in Oakland, put 6 kids through college and graduate school. Come on, somebody say, man. In the
Amen.
midst of the 80s, in the midst of, Ronald Reagan's Just Say No campaign and all these pieces. And when we finished seminary at the ITC in the late 90s, the turn of the 20th century, a long time ago, Bruce led us out and we started something called Carroll Ministries International. And we really just wanted to center family, did a whole lot of stuff around family reunions, a lot of Christian education, revivals, again, just, staying attuned to the tenets of the church and of faith and growth and movement. About 10 years later, so 2009, I was in Denver and ran across Van Jones with this green stuff and really just found that everything that he was talking about in terms of the quote unquote environment, sustainability is already stuff that we've been doing as the Black church. We've been growing food and sharing food with one another. Somebody, listen, I'm not that old, but I must have been in Louisiana once preaching somewhere. And at the end, I think it was more ceremonial than anything, but they bought me a pound of flour, a pound of sugar, right? Right. So that I can say I preach for pounds. Come on, somebody. So this is just a way of being. You don't have to tell us about hand-me-downs, right? You don't have to tell us about sustainability. You don't have to tell us about planting gardens. All of these things are things that we already do. Black church gives away more food, cooks more food, food pantries, clothes closets. We take care of one another. And when there's a storm in our community, the church is always called upon. The church always sends food and water to places and spaces. And so for us, we just wanted to let majority culture and everybody in this quote unquote green space know the power of the Black church. And so we really set out in order to tell the story of what pastors and clergy are doing all around this country already. I talked to a brother the other day. I think he was up in the Seattle area. No. He was in St. Paul, Minnesota. He's already farming. He already has coffee that they sell through the church's nonprofit. The countless number of things that we're already doing. So a lot of times people are confused, and we just want to bring a lot of those stories to light over this season, talking about different areas and stuff of that nature. I'm talking about stuff that Bruce, Ben, Emily, what are some things that other pastors are doing around the country in this space, just in general, anything that comes to mind?
So I was visiting.
Go ahead, Emily.
I was visiting a local pastor here in New Orleans, Reverend Clifton Conrad. And so he was talking about a project where they've gotten solar panels in their community, and how it took a couple of years, but to actually go and walk the space with him and to visit the grounds and to see where the panels are and how they are a part of community and how they're able to not only lower his electric bill. It was pretty awesome for him to pull out his cell phone and for him to show me exactly where the usage was in the space. He was like, let me show you. So he was really, really excited to pull his cell phone out and be able to see, and then also just talk about this dynamic of what the difference in his utility bills and how it's a blessing to the community. Now, he also talked about the difficulties of getting it and how it took some swaying of community and some encouragement from the parishioners. It was work, but now he's able to celebrate, and everybody sees the light and the benefit of sustainable practices of these, in essence, non-fossil fuel ways of getting energy. So that was pretty cool to talk with Reverend Conrad over at the Cornerstone United Methodist Church in New Orleans.
That's what's up. Ben, you were saying?
Yeah. No, I was saying there's an Ebenezer Baptist Church in Boca Raton, right off the main thoroughfare, Glades Road in Boca Raton, that has a community garden right there. Of course, Boca Raton being one of the wealthiest towns in Palm Beach County, and perhaps even in the world.
Right.
But there on the thoroughfare, Ebenezer Baptist Church sponsors and hosts a garden there, a community garden, because the community is a mixed garden. And so to make that discovery in that neighborhood, because the need is still great. So that's one church that I can think of right off the top of my head.
We also have here in this area, Shreveport, Louisiana, the Morning Star Baptist Church. Dr. Theron Jackson has solar panels on his building, just converted, put solar panels on this building. Also has an urban garden where they provide food for the neighborhood, and he collaborates with the Urban Farming Initiative, also connected to our friend and brother, Dr. Heber Brown, that's part of the Black Food Church Security Network. So those are some things that are going on in this area.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And again, when we started, I always say these fancy words, we started to be a repository and a catalyst for the Black church. What does that mean? That means that we want to be what the Source magazine was for hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, we want to be the place where the story is told. And you might be listening right now, brother pastor, sister pastor, brother trustee, sister trustee. Go ahead and put in the chat what you're doing in your neck of the woods. Tell your story. Though the reality is that we've been doing this work for a long time. It may not get you to the stage of the National Baptist Convention, but the reality is a lot of the work of the church, like who takes care of the building, who takes care of the plant, never gets a lot of light. So let's say, man, for the trustees, let's say, man, for the elders, everybody that got keys to the church, right? The custodian, right? Because those are the people over the years who take care of the church, who sign the checks for the choir to go to the Gospel Music Workshop of America, who sign the checks for the children to go to the youth convention, who sign the checks for the pastor to go to this lecture series or that. But not a lot of people tout the work of those who gather and who are those fiduciary agents. And we're talking about stuff right now to a certain degree of what those fiduciary agents can do around getting solar and all those type of things. Anything else come to mind?
Yeah, when we was talking about gardens, I thought about the fact that we mentioned that Daddy was a itinerant preacher, and I remember my first garden. I was 8th grade. I planted a garden in the back of the alley. I planted that garden, and then it grew some food, I remember. But then we left. and went to California, and so therefore I didn't plant any gardens. But we lived with an aunt who had apricot trees and also had lemon trees, and we took apricot and made apricot preserve. We also took the lemons, and used that as our baked cakes. We take the lemons and put the lemons in the powdered sugar and spread it over the cake. So we had those resources that we were using, even as I reflect back and think back on how we involved in this environmental movement and sustainability and growing food and those things.
That's amazing. And so when we moved to California, you talk about all this lush paradise where you got lemons and stuff. We must have moved to Hollywood, huh? Where are we at?
We were in Compton on Knopf Street, where the Bloods and the Crips hung out. Come on, y'all. at the Willow at something junior high school.
Willowbrook.
Yeah, and so that's where we were. Yeah, where they had the gambling shacks on the street. We were right there, and we stayed in a camper, and my sister stayed in a 2-bedroom house with my mom. We lived in the back of the camper. And Uncle James, yeah, Doc, those were the days.
Dude, I was there, Marion Anderson.
Marion Anderson, yeah.
That's right. But even in the midst of all of that story, and sometimes they don't tell all of the story of people who own those homes and who took care of those homes and those gardens. And Aunt Willie might have worked for white folk, but even when she worked for white folk and made that monkey bread and had all the recipes and a lot of stuff from the earth, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of indigenous knowledge that our people had then and still have, and we're going to try to remember and lift it so we can have some more. Powerful. Well, let's get going a little bit deeper. This piece we call the race because we wanted to, I guess, kind of highlight what for us are some of our values. So we talk about it as race. Sometimes we could talk about it as care. It's an acronym for resilient, Aboriginal, courageous, and empowering. We always want to be resilient as a people. That's why that notion, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Have an opportunity. We went to school in Miami. We used to see, well, when that wind came in, those palm trees would bend, but they would not break. And I think that's part and parcel of who we have always been as a people, and why even where we are right now, they're still down on the inside of us, and everything's gonna be all right. Right? I mean, not everything gonna be all right. You hear on the street one of them grandmama church ladies, everything gonna be all right. You know what I mean? Like that's what's inside of us, that's what's innate, and that's why we're coming back, always coming back strong. This next notion of what it means to be Aboriginal. I think that's me. We started off talking about, what it means to be Afrocentric, which is good, which is necessary. But I think melanated people and indigenous people have been all over this planet for eons, and kind of how we connect ourselves and how we silo ourselves sometimes. We want to paint with a bit of a broader brush that we are connected to all indigenous people and all indigenous knowledge. And so even unapologetically Christian, understanding that before we use this language for thousands of years, Black folk have been gathering and doing a lot of these things, a lot of these pieces, and believing in what is right and is good. The third thing is courageous. We want to be courageous in that we take risks. We want to be courageous in that we take hard stands. Listen, we're entering a place right now where it's going to be easy for some of us to kind of sell out. It's going to be easier for some of us to kind of go different ways. But we want to have courage, courage of our convictions. We want to be able to stand strong. And then fourth, empowerment. Green Church is here for the empowerment of the community. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they were talking about EV chargers and trying to get stuff to the community. And they had it all kind of mapped out where they had the developers already and they had the finances already, and all they needed was a church. And we was like, no, we gonna develop it ourselves. And they was like, what? They're like, well, why do you think about that? I was like, well, because I said, Black, pastors and laity, we've always been interested in ownership. I remember we were at Second Baptist Church in Santa Ana. First time I saw a note burning service, right? We paid the bank off, right? Like we want to own some things. And sometimes people around us look at the Black community as a place for charity, and we look at the Black community as a place for, people are doing a whole lot of consumer studies, right? They look at us as consumers. And I said, well, we don't want to be just the end product of consuming. We want to be a part of the business model. We want to make sure that we're using everything that we have in order to perpetuate ourselves, keep the dollar in our community for as long as possible. And they really kind of sat back and stepped back. And so, they were talking about other developers. By the time we got off the phone, my partners was like, well, what's our role to be one of your developers? Come on, somebody ought to say, man, these are the kind of conversations that we get to have. So again, that's why we tell you in the midst of everything that's happening, the race is on. Those values, those movements. Does that bring up anything before I move on? Y'all
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just talking to my barber. I said, hey, I got to cut my hair. I got to go do a podcast. He says, what you doing? And he's been cutting my hair probably 3 years. We talk about everything. He's a Jamaican fella, and we were talking. So I told him we were doing the race. I told him that I gave him those 4 words, the race. And he said to me, it is good to see, first of all, a family that has put together this organization. He said, secondly, it's good to see a family who are preachers. He said, because I don't trust black preachers, because a lot of black preachers are sellouts. They're black. He says they're sellouts. He said, but what I'm looking at, because I give it to him in the phone and everything. And he's like, you guys are sharing information that's powerful, because there are a lot of black pastors that won't share this kind of information with anybody. They'll just try to get it for themselves. And he said, I've seen it. And he was saying some words about some black preachers. And he said, I am so glad. And he's not talking to me quietly. We're in the barbershop. 5 other barbers cutting hair, people sitting over the thing. He says, I'm glad what you're doing. He said, you look good, Rev. You're going to look good for the camera. He said, I'm going to try to log on if I can. He said, but I've never heard of anything like this before. Wow. And he said, and I said, I've told you about it a little time. He said, yeah, but you never showed me like the website and all the stuff. And he got really excited. So the work that we're doing is exciting. It's also refreshing to know that there is a paradigm shift, and all black preachers are not chicken eating pimps kind of thing. You know, that black preachers do care about communities and care enough not to sell, not to care enough not to sell out the community, right? Yeah. And just be in place or be in position to glean from those who see us only as consumers, right? But to be owners. And so I just wanted to add that brought that to mind as you were going through that and reflecting on that.
And as we sit here on the 27th of February in this new dynamic of disaster preparedness, disaster preparedness is about to take on a whole new light. We always think of it as it relates to those things that happen in nature, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, and things of that nature, and how people have to come together for these type of emergency situations. But we now today are in a realm of disaster preparedness. And so it would behoove the congregations to be grateful for one thing that we do own, which is our buildings, and be prepared to utilize them in ways that we haven't utilized since probably the 60s. I'm thinking about how the whole dynamic of the Black Panther Party came along, and they were feeding young people. We are at a place where those are the type of things that might become a necessity, but by the grace of God, we do still have our buildings, we still own them, we still are autonomous in how we do what we do within each congregation. So that's like a blessing in disguise, and to be able for congregations to look at how best to renovate those buildings so that they are energy efficient, and to consider those buildings community minded or resilient hubs. These are ways that we can operate where all of this kind of moves in together, because this is in essence the work of Christianity. This is in the essence of the work of bringing people together, uplifting people, and also this is a way of tackling the system and being vocal. I like how Brother Malcolm put on the chat, an urban garden and food apartheid is righteous resistance. You got it, brother. It's righteous. And so I'm down for it. And I'm grateful to God that he's given us the tools, right, that we need to do this. So it just brought a different light when you were talking about buildings and access and things about the buildings. I could go on and on. Other things definitely have kind of come into my mindset, because the courageous piece is definitely something that we're going to have to garner. We're going to have to garner in order to survive, in order for all of us to survive, because it's not just about the individual. And that's what Black Church is about. It goes beyond the individual. It goes into this dynamic of community and taking care of each other. So, yeah.
All right. I see Sister Tanya Maxwell Carroll on here. I see Uh, Eddie Johnson, Vicky, we on here today. That's good. Y'all come on in. Come on in. And Emily, you said something powerful that made me think, because again, we're talking about disaster preparedness. And sometimes I remember being them when we were in North Carolina, you know, we talk about hurricanes and stuff, but then you said we have to talk about what happens when there's an active shooter, and how the church comes in play there, right? But then when you just said that, Emily, I thought, you know, in the midst of fascism itself is a disaster, right?
Right.
And so I think about the churches in Florida that are already thinking about, oh, we're going to have to teach Black history at church.
That's right.
Because we may not be able to teach it at school.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about more disaster preparedness about the things that's taking place with our economy, with our political piece. I thought that's what Emily was alluding to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. So even as we plan on a tomorrow to boycott, as we plan to boycott Target, you know, are we coming together to do that? Or are we just, you know, doing our own individual things, you know, as we not go to the grocery store, get gas, you know, how are we thinking about that? You know, what is it that we're doing collectively and not anything that anybody can take for their, you know, for their own self-grandizement? I think the word is correct. So, you know, as we think about that, you know, what is it that we are doing? How are we preparing ourselves for the next 1,400 days, I think, with this number 47, you know, how we, what are we doing to gird up our loins, in a sense, I guess, and to move. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think I know Brother Juan Guthrie in DC is definitely, you know, I mean, he gave me the message, you know, we all wearing black tomorrow, last day of feather the big warrior. I'm like, man, tell me the assignment. And again, we have to be apt to lead, but I think there are times that we have to be interested in following. And every idea, you know, may not be your idea, may not be something that you even have all of the notion of. But I got the note from Brother Al Sharpton in terms of what we'll be doing. I was like, well, that's the way. Then that's what we're doing tomorrow. Then let's go. We have to learn how to work together.
Right. And it was encouraging to also see the same message coming out of Chicago with Dr. Otis Moss. It's the same message. And then the same message pretty much of this boycott of Walgreens coming out of Atlanta, Georgia, and to watch and see two mega pastors come together where in essence, Jamal Bryan was on Craig Oliver's thread. So then you have this dynamic of some major churches saying the same thing to congregations across the state, across the nation. And so, so it's a beautiful piece.
It is beautiful, man. But let me be messy, man.
Be messy. Be messy. If we ain't messy, then we, you know, be messy. Let me see what I can disagree with.
I don't know his name right now, but I did see a clip. And again, like, I'm not mad at anybody, and people have good reasons and validations, man. But I saw a whole big old church folk, man. They all went to Target together in order to buy black, but they just packed Target out. You know what I mean? But they were buying black products, right? Now, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but why are we not getting the memo? Why are we not together? What's up with us?
Yeah, that's a good one. I saw that too, and I think that sometimes because we're not connected, and that's why we need Green the Church, right? This repository that brings folks together across some of the same issues that we're struggling with, and I love the fact that Green the Church connects itself to organizations like CNBC, to the Sam Proctor movement, and there are things like that should help us. What happens though, we have some clergy who are not too pleased with the most familiar faces that might be in the media who we say represent the Black church. And so what they do is say, hey, I go and make my own kind of movement. And yeah, I think we should go in there and spend all our money at Target buying Black. Now I realize, you're still spending your money at Target, right? We can't just spend all our money at Target. I would much rather see folks like in Florida come to the flea market. We've got 80% of the vendors are Haitian. Of course, they're not the manufacturers of their products, but the business is a cash and carry. So whatever you buy with them, they get to take that home, and that money turns over in our community 100 times. But if you buy it from Target, that money's not coming back to our community. It's you just took 150, 300 people into Target, and that money's not coming back to our community. As a matter of fact, I would much rather you had a fair at your church and say, come to my church and buy it, and the money comes back into the community. So yeah, I'm glad you being, let's be petty right now. Let's be petty right now.
Nobody. We just talking about what we talking about.
Those are modern day.
I'm sorry, not petty.
Those are modern day prophets. They're saying this is the way that God is saying doing it. Somebody said, no, this is the way. Which is the way? So that's the question. Who you're following? Who's leading us? Those kinds of
and that reminds me of, there's a story. I'm gonna mess it up. These ain't the right animals, but just let's say it was two sheep fighting, and they was fighting over whatever, and then a wolf was coming behind them. They too busy fighting each other that they don't recognize that the wolf is coming. And I think the time is out for that. It seems like we are beyond mission critical, but at the same time, hopeful.
Can we
Any questions? It sounds like we may be entering reorientation.
Grooving. Okay.
Dr. Malcolm, we might need to bring you on so you can flesh that out. For those of us who have not read Brueggemann, I mean, I know how to say it. It's like I got to read more, but definitely.
Hey, are we gonna? One of the things as we're talking about this, how Green the Church is transferring or transferring knowledge and building up the next generation of leadership through our fellowship. We'll say something about that today.
Yeah. So this year, and we will have a segment like for our fellows as well. We have right now 7 outstanding fellows from different parts of the country. I'll say it, different parts of the world. And our fellows are individuals who are interested in the work of Green the Church. And right now we have people who have, happen to have matriculated on the master's level, whether that be the sciences or theology. We have people who have not, matriculated like that, but we're in the same conversation. I think we have to note that there's so many ways to get knowledge, and there's so many ways to be leaders. And sometimes, and again, I applaud, all these the degrees. I always talk about my mother, because it was because of my mother that we were able to get BAs and masters, and all that's good and fine. But the reality is, even on our matriculation, right, to get master's degrees and all of that, is my friends and family who stayed home and were beauticians, worked at the parks. Those individuals that have always been our foundation. I talk about my mom, sometimes after we matriculate, we see things on these different levels. But the reality is, just like my dad was able to go to school because he was I don't know, the 6th or 7th out of 10, his big brothers worked the farm, right? They worked in order for, by the time he came up, they said, oh boy, you might as well go on to school, right? All the hard work was done, right? And even coming up, man, preaching at Mount Calvary and other places, is those men who worked in the shipyard, the Navy boats, who worked in the cannery, is those individuals that gave money for us to go to school and matriculate. Now, I don't know how I got there, but I just think that's so important because sometimes we act as if, I always say, if you ever see a turtle on a fence, you know it didn't get there by itself. We always need the totality of the community. And so Green the Church with our fellows, we have some people who have matriculated such, and we have some people that this is a part of their matriculation, but all giving great leadership. I will put up a flyer, so I won't name them all, but we have individuals coming through that we're pouring into on a monthly basis, and we plan to have a second cohort next year. So be in prayer for us, but very excited about those individuals and what they're working on. Some pastors, again, some in the public health arena, some chaplains, and there's room for you. Indeed. Let's hit this. I know, Mama. Hey, Mama, I see my mother watching. Mama watching on Facebook. All right. Listen, we've got about 15 minutes. I want to talk about our pillars. And our pillars are three. They're amplifying what we call green liberation theology. And then it's promoting sustainable practices. And then building power for political and economic change. So even as we do the fellowship, right, we're teaching, and then we have a one-on-one facilitation, and each one of us has one of these pillars that we're really specializing in. And so I want to ask Emily to start off and tell us a little bit about amplifying green liberation theology. Hey, the other thing, since we started Carroll Ministries, it was always the preacher. Who the preacher? Bruce the preacher. He liked to preach. Then I get to be called a prophet because that sounds good. And then Ben's the pastor because Ben has the pastor's heart, right? He actually likes people. Y'all know some people that are preachers that don't like people, but they preach though. As far as I'm Billy go. But Ben's the pastor, and then Emily came along, and I have deemed her the professor.
So I have been.
She studies real hard.
I have been tasked with leading the cohort of fellows in about 3 different sessions on amplifying green liberation theology. Where we started first, which I thought was important, was just dissecting some of that title, because that title encompasses, a lot of words: amplifying, green, liberation, theology. And our fellows, as Pastor Ambrose mentioned, they run the gamut. Some they're in various levels of education, various levels of leadership, various levels in their life, and we're just kind of allowing them to see the interconnectedness of what Green the Church is about, the interconnectedness of our environment with all of what they're doing. And so they're able to kind of learn how it works. And so spent a lot of time with just kind of dissecting liberation theology and acknowledging where it comes from, or where it helms from, studying and taking some time with the works of James Cone, studying and taking some time with the works of Gustavo Gutierrez, who dealt with abject poverty in South America, really kind of delving this dynamic of theology and how people view God and understanding God in our work. And we started there, and then we're going to also go into some biblical passages that could be used as an individual presents and or preaches as it relates to creation care and justice perspective. I mean, I put in the chat, someone asked, where do you find in the Bible examples of being revolutionary or resistance? And I don't exactly remember how he phrased it, but whatever the case may be, it really just depends on how you read the Bible, because it's right there in black and white. Jesus himself was a revolutionary. Jesus himself was one who was all about justice for those who are marginalized. Jesus was the one that said, hey, y'all up in the synagogue doing what y'all doing according to these laws, as far as trying to, quote unquote, keep Hebraic laws as such, and you're discounting the people who are needing to be blessed. And so just kind of looking at that lens from a justice perspective. And all of this ties into amplifying green liberation theology. So we also are going to spend some time with the text utilizing the Green Bible and just kind of ways to acknowledge everything from the land, everything from those things that are made by God, and then breaking down scripture, how you can use scripture to make sure that your message also encompass a message of acknowledging that God is not only concerned about man, God is also concerned about the land. So that's green liberation theology, and we are excited to continue with that for the next 2 weeks, I believe, 2 sessions, so the next 2 months.
All right, all right. These fellows, I think Ryan, yeah, man, these are our fellow beautiful group. Uh, People working real hard for the Lord. This is our first cohort, and they've been doing a wonderful job uh, uh, working on their own projects. And we want to make sure that we're platforming them. On March 1st, Minister Yanni Peters has a kind of meditation piece called Walk with Yanni, and we're going to partner with her on the 1st. Everybody in the Oakland area, I think we're going to be up at Joaquin Miller Park, and we're going to do a trail walk, and we're going to end that in meditation, prayer, scripture. Y'all come on out. It's time to get out in nature. Spring is in the air, right? Amen. So those are our fellows. The other piece of our pillar that we're doing with our fellows that we just do with Green the Church in general is promoting sustainable practices. Bruce, come on and talk to us about what that looks like, what some of these sustainable practices are, and all those pieces.
Well, yes, thank you. Well, basically, I kind of help and lead in the area of churches that are going to be putting solar, that want to put solar panel EV charging stations as well. But also, we start out with the basic in terms of engaging churches and congregations to plant their own food, to grow their own food. And we collaborate, of course, I said earlier, on a national level with Dr. Heber Brown, but also in this city, we touch bases with Shreveport Green, also Urban Farm Initiative, the group is called. And so we have those conversations, celebrate Earth Day. We try to have these conversations with people so that they can create ways to live healthy, to eat healthy, to be aware of the foods that are going into their bodies. Also, when you're looking at church buildings, look at where we can come in and do talk about retrofitting, or we can come in and do that's a word I want to use, feasibility studies, where we can look at your building and determine what it needs and make it airtight, to see where there are cracks or crooks or windows, lighting, your roof. We have these conversations with you to educate you, and then also to help find resources to rectify whatever issue that might be going on in your church. And we have GTC Red, which is our LLC, that also helps to have conversation, and people who are trained in the area of electrification, who are trained in the area of supplying these solar panels, EV chargers. Talk about ways where churches can not only just save money, but also can make money, can have streams of income that can provide income for the future and to sustain your church and church properties.
Thank you, man. Yeah, definitely, man. I thought when you were talking, man, I thought about Mance Jackson. We ought to have a Mance Jackson award. No, not Christian education. Church administration. Church administration, right? Like these are really church administration pieces. And a lot of times people are like, what is all the Green the Church stuff? Listen, y'all got to build in the building efficiency, the feasibility studies. This is everything that your trustees are doing anyway, or trying to do, sometimes doing on their own pieces that we can help with. Yeah. And then the third piece is around building power for political and economic change. Ooh, don't that sound good? We building power. Come on, Ben, talk to us about.
Well, that's a heavy conversation. Building power for political and economic change. Really, the focus is really helping to educate congregations, pastors, leaders on how the church has a responsibility to be engaged in the processes politically. We did a course with our fellows where we had a chance to just begin with definitions. Let's just talk about definitions first to make sure we all understand what's happening. And someone said, well, there's a separation between the church and the state. Listen, beloved, don't believe that lie. We're interconnected. We're there, and we should be involved, and we should understand policy. We should understand laws and rules, and that's why a lot of folks got twisted over this last election, because they didn't really understand politics, right? If you really don't understand politics, politics is not the black preacher just arguing and mad. Politics is an intelligent understanding of how political processes work, understanding the Senate, which means you don't have a problem approaching senators, congressional personalities, knowing when their meetings are taking place, having someone in your church that informs your congregation and keeps you engaged. We talked about economics, and what does that mean? There are resources that are available, and we should have a voice. We have an impact on the gross national product. We have an impact on the gross domestic product, and not just here in our country, but across the world. You see what's happening in our country. You see the moves that are being made by our president. But if you understand it, you're not so frightened and or afraid, and you understand, because even with the gold card that our president is introducing now, so our minds have to start thinking. Either who's going to be doing the investing, and how are we going to be engaged in this process? To dismiss ourselves from this process is absolute suicide. And so one of the things that we do, it's a disaster to stick our heads in the sand and act like we don't know what's going on. No, we need to know what's going on. We've been in too many meetings in our commission meetings, county commission meetings, where people we just arguing, and we're coming in after decisions have already been made, and we're fussing about things that are happening, projects that are going on in our communities, regentrification that's happening, but we're fussing about meetings that happened years ago. Someone said, if you want to keep someone ignorant, put it in a book. Put the information in a book, put it in a newspaper, and folks will just stay ignorant because they won't read it. We won't go to the library anymore, and we're on social media, but we're only watching TikTok. I'm just saying what I'm saying. And we're losing our battle and an opportunity to advance. So this particular area of what Green the Church does is helps facilitate a better understanding, a working knowledge, and practical steps as to how we can build power for political and economic change. Wow, that's in a nutshell.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Yeah, man. We can help introduce you to your congressperson, to your senator, and no matter how big or small your church is, you have power. You have power, and you have a voice. And when you show up, listen, brother pastor, sister pastor. I've been in a lot of meetings with people in the community. There are a lot of good community groups. The difference is a lot of those groups don't have place and space. It doesn't matter if it's a storefront or a cathedral. You have an address and you pay taxes in a certain location. And when you walk in as the man and woman of God, they will hear you. And we want to help make sure that you know how to talk about environmental justice, that you know what's going on in terms of air quality and toxicity in your area, because you may think that more people are dying in your area of gun violence, but you may do more funerals around cancer. You may be losing young folk from asthma. So these are pieces. And being as you talk, man, you reminded me of our friend and brother, our big brother, Khalif, Reverend Walter Humphrey.
He's here.
Always telling us to stay in the fight, who's always telling us to keep our ears and eyes open, telling us that everybody that looks like an enemy may not be an enemy. And I think you're right. We can't keep our heads in the sand. We have to figure out what's our next move. And one thing that I got a call from Curtis Robinson the other day. I think it was powerful. And there are a lot of people talking about this blockchain and this crypto piece. And the reality is, and there's a lot that we need to learn to know. a lot of these pieces we have to know because we have to apply the theological formation and the ethics so that we make sure that whatever's going on has an ethical base. But what was said is even in the mining of crypto, what's needed is cheap energy. And the fact is, Green the Church is putting up 50, 100 microgrids all over this country at Black churches, and we're putting up more solar than's needed because we're using the solar to go into the EV charging station. But we can just as easily use that solar to mine crypto. So it's how can we stay a part of the national and international conversation and really understand the power that we have. Amen. Any questions, thoughts? Y'all come on as we hurry to our close. Bruce, you talking? Bruce, we can't hear you.
I see a lot of different on here. I see a lot of different questions. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
I see a lot of different questions, and I know we can't address them all, but in terms of how we do that, let them know that we'll be back again at this same time at another date. But just want to put that out there to you on today. It's a lot of good questions, which that we can answer them all on today, but I doubt if we'll be able to do that. Just want to note that.
Thank you, man. Thomas Donaldson's on here, our board member at Green the Church. Sister Roberta. Khalifa want to ask a question. Where's the biblical model? Yeah, he's challenging us. Where's the biblical model for the church to protest what government is doing? Come on, Emily.
Emily tried to answer it earlier. She did.
No, there was dialogue. There was dialogue in the chat between myself and also Brother Malcolm contributed. When you're asking about where is the biblical models for the church to protest what government is doing, just kind of speaking towards who Jesus was and how Jesus operated. As far as an external text, you have The Politics of Jesus by Aubrey Hendricks as one particular writing that kind of can help view text in ways that we weren't originally told to view text. And so it becomes a powerful piece where it shows that Jesus himself was a revolutionary, one who was against the systems and also checking the systems. And so, that then Malcolm also kind of contributed to some thoughts. He said, check any one of the gospels. So it's a dynamic of just having a lens to be able to back up and say, hey, wait a minute. This is, he wasn't tossing the tables just to say we supposed to not sell in church, tossing the tables because we're not supposed to sell. That's the structure that he was fighting. And so all of those are ways that we can really read the text with a different type of lens once we give ourselves permission to read it with a different lens, and a lens that wasn't always taught the same way. Whenever scriptures were introduced in our Sunday school curriculum, they told us how to read it, how to interpret it, but there were always other angles that you could see. I mean, we just weren't bold enough to say it out loud because whole lot of reasons. I'm gonna stop right there.
Nobody. They want to offend nobody.
You will.
I want to offend them.
I'm gonna stop right there. I have a 1 o'clock. I'm gonna stop right there.
All right. Again, looking at the Old Testament prophets, I think is a powerful question, but nobody really likes a prophet. And there's stories of prophets being thrown in the cisterns and running away from kings. And the reality is, for the physical, it can be a dangerous undertaking. But when we understand what is spiritual and the power, I think we are called to stand in these gaps. We are called to make these bold statements. Right now, brothers and sisters, I mean, we're in a place where the federal government is looking at nonprofits like ours that actually were awarded some federal grants that now we're not getting those federal grants. And then the president is telling people, if you know of anybody that's a part of the DEI, report them. And they're creating lists of organizations like ours so they can understand who we are. These are the times that we are in. And some people are taking their baseball and bats and leaving. But I like that poem. It said, rest of you but don't you quit. and we're here to say that the race is on, and we're going to stand. Emily says she has a hard stop at one. Ryan, y'all say man for Ryan, he's running the joint. He told me to make sure that number one, March 13th at 10 o'clock is going to be our next piece. Ben Carroll will be our host for that one, March 13th, Thursday at 10 o'clock, 12 Central. Please be there. Listen, if you're here and you've never signed up, please go to our website. Maybe Ryan can put in the link. Sign up to get our email and be on our news list. If you're here, your clergy is pastor. We have a free clergy pastors registry. We want you to register. Let us know where you're pastoring or what ministry you're in. We want to know that we can count on you as we continue to speak truth to power, as we continue to fight against injustice everywhere. And then our major event, listen, 15 years, this is our 15th year as Green the Church. We're going to celebrate in Atlanta, Georgia, October 12th through the 14th, our Green the Church National Summit. We're working on that. Dr. E, our Georgia State Director, is on the call. We're getting ready to hit Atlanta with the storm and talk about all of these issues. That's all we have. Any closing thoughts as we leave? Ben, say something to
Just
the people.
grateful. Just grateful for everyone who's on the call. Looking forward to seeing you all next week. That's 1 o'clock Eastern for those of you on the East Coast. And we'll be with Kenya Madison. She's the director of Healthier Delray. So she'll be with us, and she's also one of our most recent additions to our steering committee for Green the Church. And we're looking forward to that. We've got some stuff coming up in terms of Earth Day. Don't forget to look out for Earth Day information for Green the Church National and, of course, here in Florida and other states. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, you got anything?
I'm good. Peace and blessings to all.
Bruce?
All right, we're all good. Happy as can be.
There's no time to play or dream the trip. We have hard work to do and loaves to live. Shun the struggle. The struggle is the gift. Be strong. God bless you. I'm as happy as can be too.
All right. All right.
Peace, y'all.
See y'all happy asses later.